Open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like the minutes to reflect that we held an executive session prior to the meeting tonight for legal items. Any comments on agenda items? Any comments on agenda items? Okay. Items 4, business and finance reports.
Motion to approve items 1 through 6.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the business and finance. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett? Dr. Cavalla?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly? Yes. Mr. Widener?
No.
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 5, superintendent's report.
I'd like a motion to approve items 1 through 14 and 16 through 20 on the regular agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for items 1 through 14 and 16 through 20. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Cavalla?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly?
No.
Mr. Widener?
Just a second. Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett? No. Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
I'd like a motion to approve item 15.
Motion to approve.
Do you have a second?
Even though there's some shady characters on there.
Or a shady character. Do we have a second?
Just a second. I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Cavalla?
Abstain.
Mr. Swilly?
There's one character on there, I just don't know what it is.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett? Yeah. Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a few updates for you. I know that we did not have all the information 2 weeks ago. We've gotten some updates. I also thought that I would just very quickly review. Uh-oh, Chuck. What's wrong? What do I need to do?
Turn it on.
Yeah, it probably did. It's blinking, so I'm guessing it's going to come back on. There
It's
we go.
coming on.
All right, thank you. So there was there were a number of items on contact tracing that were not, we were not privy to last time, and also any kind of Department of Health triggers that were going to indicate a closure. I do have that information now, so I am prepared to share it with you, but I also thought I would address some of the things that we talked about last time as far as the district policies, as there might be some parents who are watching tonight that didn't watch the other night. So I want to give you that update. First of all, it's hot, and we experience this every year. There are 2 buildings right now that are not air conditioned. The high school is not air conditioned in all the classrooms, nor is the primary center. So we have continued to monitor the heat index in both of those buildings. The high school, as of today, has 4 monitors and the PC has 5. At this point, the principals are doing the monitoring, or they're delegating that out. So we are monitoring, and we have gone into the extreme caution in 2, we believe in 2 different areas, and so we've shut those down. But I just want to let you guys know we've ordered enough monitors for us to have them in each of the classrooms at the high school and each of the classrooms at the PC. But right now, we're in the process of taking those readings throughout the day. I was in both buildings this morning. I've talked with all of the school nurses, and we're continuing to monitor this. Now, For those of you that aren't familiar with the heat index, it basically gives us a reading of indoor heat based on the temperature and the relative humidity. So we have these little monitors, and it'll come up with the humidity level and the temperature, and then you just sort of, cross-reference it, and it'll land in one of those 4 different criteria or categories of caution, extreme caution, danger, and extreme danger. So that's how all of this works. I just wanted to let you know that. And this is the heat index that we're using, which is the National Weather Service. So when we're in a caution range, basically what I did today and what I did yesterday was we're using those monitors. We use fans and we're pulling shades, and most of the teachers are doing that every day. We use a minimal of physical activity. We're providing lots of water. I will also tell you, again, I have let the nurses know that if they're getting any kind of concerns, heat-related concerns, that they're going to give me a call. All right? And that hasn't happened at the high school or the PC yet. I haven't gotten any of those calls. Now, extreme caution, we got a reading of extreme caution today in the high school gym. Shut it down. There was no practices in the high school gym. The other place that we didn't take a reading, but we believe would have gotten into the extreme levels this year was the admin gymnasium, because it has a wooden roof, right? And it just heat just comes in. So we didn't use that today. So we just anticipated that we would get an extreme caution reading, so we just didn't use it. We moved the kids around. So if we do get extreme caution ratings, we're going to look at ways to move the kids around. If we're in that extreme area, that's when I would consider, okay, is this something that's going to trigger like an early dismissal consideration? If it's 2:30 in the afternoon, probably not. We're just going to try to mitigate until we get to dismissal. But we've only had that in 2 different areas, and our teachers are working hard to keep it as cool as possible. We always have 2 or 3 days like this every single year, whether it's in the spring or in the fall. Fusion C3 enrollments. To give you an update on this, these were our enrollments as of Wednesday. So this is sort of what it's looking at. It's hovering between 90 and 100 kids that have signed up for Fusion C3. And those are the grade level numbers. The CDC level of community transmission, I showed this 2 weeks ago. This is how the CDC is now determining level of community transmission based on the number of cases per 100,000 in the past 7 days and the percent positivity. So I called Gene Ziak today, and I said, Gene, what are your numbers? Because they are different than the CDC. CDC has a different, rolling cutoff. So what he told me was, last week in Wyoming County, we had 37 cases. As of last night, as of yesterday, there were 23 cases this week. The percent positivity was 6.2 and 14.6 cases per 100,000. That came from the local EMA. The CDC, and again, these are going to be slightly different because of the dates that are used, but percent positivity last week, according to the CDC, was 7.89, so it's dropped some, and the cases were 27. So we are currently tracking 4 positive cases. We have 13 close contacts that are in quarantine, and we have 9 close contacts that are not in quarantine. And I'm going to get to that. What's the difference? So in all, from 4 cases, 22 close contacts, 9 do not have to quarantine, 13 are quarantined. And I'll explain that in a moment. I want to run through these quickly. I know, board members, I know you saw this before. I'm doing this for the benefit of the community and parents who may be watching. So we are recommending masks be worn. That is a recommendation by the CDC. The school board has adopted that they're recommending but not requiring masks. We're letting kids wear their own masks. They have to wear them on the bus. And so, you know, if they're putting them on in the morning and some kids are wearing them all day. Some kids are not, and they're putting them on when they get back on the buses at night. And we have masks available. I was out on the bus platform tonight. Little kid got on the bus and said, you know, to ask the driver, can I have a mask? So he had lost his during the day, and so we have them, and in the classrooms and on the buses.
Heather, can I interrupt? Also, the update on the bus, for the buses,
Yeah.
that went from October, what was it, September something to January, right?
Right. So that
now
is a
it's
federal
January,
guideline.
It's been extended.
Right. That was a federal guideline that was extended until January to require masks on public transportation. Thank you, Lori. We are asking adults to screen daily, take their temperature, use the hand sanitizer. You know, if their temperature's elevated, they don't feel good, we're asking them to go to their building principal. And we have a little bit different procedures in the different buildings, but that's all been communicated to the adults. The kids, they arrive wherever they're supposed to arrive, at their homeroom or at a designated door. If they want to be screened, we're screening them. They go to their classroom at the younger ages and they conduct a temperature check if they want it, and they contact the nurse with any kind of issues. We're continuing to clean throughout the day, high-touch surfaces, bathrooms, the cafeteria. We provide bins. If teachers are worried about a particular item, they can put it in a bin and it'll be sanitized. And we're providing cleaning supplies to anybody that wants them. After school is when we're doing the deep cleaning. We continue to use the static sprayers. We continue to use the UV lights and the disinfectants that we've been using for the past 2 years. Transportation, masks are required. We're doing the family seating again on the buses, windows open, and we are cleaning those buses after each run. Food service, we're seating at tables or group desks, and we're cleaning after every lunch period. So there's surface cleaning in between when the kids are coming in. Other news, you know, we're encouraging kids to bring their own water bottles. You'll find cases of water throughout the buildings. So if a kid forgets their water bottle or whatever, they can grab one. And, you know, we're keeping our classroom doors locked, but in an open position, and we're keeping the univents running. Part of the problem that's happening with these high temperatures is that our univents are full open, okay? So when they're full open, in order to get as much ventilation as possible, they're sucking in hot air. So that's part of the reason that in this building and in the PC, by the afternoons, those rooms get very warm. All right, so this is the new news that we got last week on contact tracing and how it's being done and community transmission triggers. Now, so you gotta stick with me here because it gets a little, there's nuances to this. A close contact through proximity and duration of exposure is somebody who has been within 6 feet of an infected person. That says cumulative. We were told consecutive. So I'm not really sure what that discrepancy is. But 15 minutes in less than 6 feet perimeter, and you're considered a close contact unless you're a kid in school, in a classroom. If you're staying 3 to 6 feet away and both you and the infected person are wearing a mask, okay? If you're both wearing a mask, then you're not considered a close contact and you don't need to quarantine. The other incident in which you would not have to quarantine is if you were vaccinated. So if Mr. Swilly and I are 3 to 6 feet apart and I get sick and he's vaccinated, he is not a close contact. Okay? If we're both wearing masks and he's not vaccinated, he is not a close contact. So this is the guidance that was passed down to us. I'm sorry? Yes. Okay. So then they also created this is on the CDC website, so this is what if a kid gets sick. Okay, so now I'm going to pivot a little bit to what if a kid gets sick. So, student is coughing, has sore throat. Okay, so two different symptoms, and the teacher says, look, why don't you go down to the nurse? If the kid is not wearing a mask, the teacher is going to ask the kid to please put a mask on. All right, you're going down to the nurse's station, please put a mask on. Kid goes down to the nurse's station, nurse evaluates the child, all right? And if the nurse decides that this kid is presenting, either A, has a fever, or B, is presenting 2 symptoms of COVID, the nurse is going to say to the kid, look, I just need you to sit here for a few minutes, I'm going to call your parent. The parent is called, the parent is asked to come and pick up the kid, okay? Now, we don't know if this kid has anything, okay? So the child is sent home. The parent is encouraged to contact the child's primary care provider. So if the parent chooses not to contact the primary care provider, we still don't know if that kid has COVID. So we're not going to contact trace, right? There's no point. The kid could have tonsillitis. So we say to the parent, look, we need you to go back to 2 years ago, right? Keep the child home until the child doesn't have any symptoms anymore. Fever-free, symptom-free, without medication for 24 hours. They can return to school. If you're a parent who takes the kid to the primary care physician, right, and the COVID test is done, all right, and it's negative, again, 24 hours symptom-free, bring your kid back to school, okay? So you, as a parent, you can choose to have a COVID test done or not choose to have it done. All right. Pick the kid up, you make your decision. We're going to clean and disinfect the area that the kid's occupied. We're going to ventilate the area. So let's say the student has the negative COVID test and returns to school as soon as they're symptom-free. We haven't done any contact tracing or anything. So let's say parent takes the child, takes them for a test, and they have a positive COVID test. Well, now the process changes a little bit. So now our nurses are going to start contact tracing. And they're going to look at, again, go back to that definition of a contact tracing. If you're within 6 feet, right, or you're 3 feet to 6 feet and you don't have masks on, it gets really complicated. But if we're going to start contact tracing, and then we're going to call Department of Health and we're going to do the reporting that we need to do. All right. If you are contacted and you are told your child was a close contact, we're going to advise you to take your kid and to isolate them for 10 days. You can choose to have your child tested day 2 to 5, and if they have a negative test, they can come back. I'm sorry, I'm messing that up.
No, that's vaccinated.
What?
That's vaccinated. To take
That's
the
if they're
vaccine.
vaccinated.
That's if they're vaccinated. I'm sorry. So if they're not vaccinated, you're going to go
After the 7th day.
after day 5 to 7, and you're going to have them tested because you can shorten the quarantine period. If they're vaccinated, it's 2 to 5, but you don't have to quarantine. You just wear a mask.
So they can come to school with the mask on.
They can come to school with a mask on if they're vaccinated. And we were just asking them to please, all right, so we're asking them to wear the mask for 14 days, all right? But if they, on day 2 to 5, they test and they test negative, the mask comes off. All right.
And that again, that's not Tunkhannock rules.
That's not Tunkhannock.
Right.
All right. So ill students, these are students diagnosed with COVID, can return 10 days out from the start of the symptoms and they're fever-free for 24 hours without fever-reducing meds and their symptoms have improved, they can come back to school. That's if their child is positive. So I'm just going to run you through some scenarios here, because I know that this is confusing. So let's say at the primary center, nobody's vaccinated, right? And we don't have a mask mandate. So I'm going to assume that a lot of the kids in the class are not wearing masks. I'm just going to assume that. All right, so we have an exposure at the PC, and we have 8 students identified as close contacts. Those 8 students are going to quarantine. All right, because none of them are vaccinated, and not everybody's wearing a mask. So that's how it's going to roll. That's how it's going to play out at that primary level. At the high school, let's say we have 2 teachers that are identified as close contacts. Okay? They're close contacts, but they've been vaccinated. They're going to come to school. They're going to wear a mask for 14 days. They're going to test between day 2 and day 5. And if they're negative, the mask can come off. Yes? We're going to ask. That's part of this contact tracing. It's just, we're going to ask. So we're going to say to them, look, if you're vaccinated, this is the case. Look, if you're not vaccinated, this is the case. Okay.
But they don't have to reveal it.
I can't make them.
I know,
I can't make them.
I'm just asking.
So I mean, the answer to that question though is that if they choose not to reveal it, then they're assumed to not be vaccinated, and then
They're
they
wearing a
follow-
mask for 14 days.
No, they're out.
Yeah.
They're out for the
Yeah, they're right. You're right. They're quarantined.
they're quarantined.
They're quarantined.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So student at the IC test positive. Students are masked and they're 3 feet apart. So let's say we did have a mask mandate. We are maintaining at least 3 feet. And most of the kids at the IC are not vaccinated. The only ones that really are eligible that are 12 and above, we have a few 6th graders. If we were all wearing masks and we maintained the 3 feet apart, nobody would have to quarantine. All right? There'd be a greater continuity of that. In scenario 4, we have exposure at the high school. We have 11 students that are identified as close contacts. 5 of them are already vaccinated. All right? This is a very plausible, this could happen. You have 5 of those kids are vaccinated. They don't have to quarantine. We ask them to mask up, right? Come back to school, stay in school. 6 of them are not vaccinated. Those 6 are on quarantine. The 5 that are vaccinated are not. So, masking and vaccination are kind of the linchpins here, right? Like they're the one, these are, when I look at this guidance, this is what it comes down to. If all students are masked and we maintain 3 feet of social distancing, close contacts are not required to quarantine, resulting in more in-person instruction and fewer disruptions to the educational process. It's right up there, George. I just read it.
Did you say 3 feet?
Yes. We maintain 3 to 6 feet for kids.
If they're masked.
They're all, but everybody's masked. Everybody. The kid that's sick and the kids that aren't sick, okay?
If they're not masked, it's 6 feet.
Right. If you're not masked, it's 6 feet. And our desks are not apart 6 feet, okay? They're apart 3 feet. That's what we've maintained. So if the close contacts are vaccinated, they don't need to quarantine. So that's what I'm saying, like it kind of comes down to these 2 things. And obviously, we have no control over vaccinations. If close contacts are vaccinated, they do not need to quarantine. They need to wear a mask for 14 days. They test on day 2 to 5. If they're negative, the mask can come off. Or if they become positive or symptomatic, they isolate. I know this is very confusing. I know it is.
And for those students that are being quarantined, there would be the Fusion C3, correct?
I'm sorry.
For the students that are on quarantine, they would be able to do the work on Fusion C3?
Yeah. They're not a Fusion C3 student, but they could use that platform.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay, now, so this is what they gave us for outbreak containment, all right? What they're defining an outbreak as 2 or more cases among a group that don't have any other, we can't trace it any other way, right? Except that they're together in school. And they're saying within a 14-day period. Now this doesn't trigger a closure. This doesn't trigger a group going online. It doesn't. All it means is, hey, we got to watch here, right? Because we got a couple kids in this room, and the only time we really see them together is when they're in school. So we just have to pay attention. So what the DOH is in Department of Education is saying is when we start to see a rise in cases, we should reach out to the DOH, and we should start to have conversations with them. They're going to work with us to determine if a closure is necessary and the appropriate closure length. But they're never going to ask us to close for more than 14 days. Again, it's hard to tease this out, but just because a classroom, say, had 5 or 6 kids in it, that doesn't mean we're going to close a building. So I want you to understand that there is a difference there. Okay, so they would recommend a 14-day closure if we have more than 5% of cases in the buildings. The PC is a small building, so what they're defining that is 25 case threshold. In a medium school, which is what the IC is, it would be 25 to 45 case threshold. In a large school like the high school, anywhere from 45 plus cases, right? Now we didn't hit those numbers in a 14-day rolling last year. So that's just perspective for you, all right? We did not hit those numbers. Or if you have 3 simultaneous classrooms and or core group outbreaks, again, that you can't trace anywhere else but to school, right? They want us to call them and to talk it through with them. We should reach out to DOH if any of those things happen. They would recommend the suspension of sports and extracurriculars. Again, we never hit those numbers last year. Schools may consider short-term closures if time is needed to determine close contacts and or if staffing shortages or student quarantines become disruptive to in-person learning. Again, last year there were a couple times where we closed on a dime because we couldn't complete the contact tracing. And I can't promise that won't happen again. I hope it doesn't. We do our best to get as much done before 8 o'clock as possible. But it could happen. So those are the updates I have for you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that I am able to, if there are any.
Thank you. Committee reports. Extracurricular met tonight.
Yes, there was an extracurricular meeting tonight. We talked about, Mr. Boscher's here, I don't know if Mr. Janeski's here. We talked about what we're doing moving forward with the extracurricular and co-curriculars. We're following the same guidance as we currently have as of today, which is we're telling our coaches that in regards to maximizing safety, maximizing health, we're providing our kits. We're going to provide hand washing, sanitizing, temperature checks, voluntary check, and we are also making roll call necessary because if there's a contact trace, so we're going to ask our coaches and advisors to take roll call so we can, if there's an issue, we can contact trace. Obviously, we've talked some of the other things that we're going to allow locker rooms to be used by teams. We are not allowing showers as of this time for any of the student athletes. Visitor locker rooms will be available. We will direct the visiting teams. We also talked about if other schools recommend mask mandates, we're going to do what we did last year. We don't feel it's appropriate for our athletes, our student athletes, to be involved in an active competitive sport while wearing a mask. So the PIAA still is allowing to take what we call a no contest. So we're not going to force our kids to wear masks while they're actively competing. We are also telling the coaches that the players and the student athletes can have masks, and we will provide masks in that kit that we have. There's some cleaning supplies, I think, that we'll provide if coaches choose to do that, but it's really the mask if the student athletes want to wear the mask. We're also recommending what Heather talked about. We're trying to, what we did, and I'll use the football team example, we're trying to keep the kids in cohorts to minimize the potential outbreak and that contact trace. If there are times, if there's an indoor meeting, we're kind of lucky that it's an outdoor sport, but if there's an indoor meeting, we're trying to keep that social distancing as best we can, try to limit the meetings in time and in scope. So those are the things I believe we had from the extracurricular, but we're not mandating any masks, at least that's the current flavor of the board, so that's going to carry over to our current extracurriculars. But we're still going to provide the necessary kits that we gave to the coaches and the advisors last year. Did I miss anything, Mr. Bosher?
I have a question, and I had one other clarification. If it's an outdoor activity, there is no contact tracing. So
That's
if
correct. Right now,
Right. If it's an indoor meeting or something, that's different.
That's
in the
right.
locker room, on the school bus where they have to wear the masks, all those types of things. Right. The other thing was, can teams elect to compete with masks if the other school's requiring it? On a case by, do the teams get to decide? That's what they did last year.
that's what we just said. We're not, if a team says that it's, Todd, help me out if I'm wrong. If they're mandating us to wear the mask during the competition, we're choosing to take a no contest. That communication has already existed among the athletic directors on the teams. I believe what we said last year is that we as a school board don't want to put our student athletes in a position where they're exerting themselves. I mean, like I said, I can't imagine a
I only
basketball.
asked because that wasn't the case last year. Because
No, that's what we did.
I'm telling you
They
that the
played with-
teams decided.
Teams, remember?
Teams decided game by game. Because volleyball was indoor in
If
the
the
spring.
teams decide, but we're not mandating the kids to wear it. That's my point.
Right, but the team can decide that they're going to mandate themselves
Sure,
to wear
if
it
a
and
student
play.
athlete- if
Okay,
a parent
that's what
says-
that's all I was asking was.
Some coaches, you're right, there are some coaches did choose collectively to say, if you really want to play, we will
Okay.
give you the courtesy of wearing a mask.
Yeah,
But
However,
that-
some of our players like to not wear masks.
right.
and that's not mandated by the school board. Us.
Right.
We're not mandating that. That's the point.
Right.
And there are some parents that chose to have their child wear a mask during competition. That's their choice. That's all I have. I believe Heather, did I get everything? Okay.
Thank you. Moving on, under new business, we have the visa account for your review. Then item 2, looking for resolution to be adopted to approving the ATSI school plan for the coming school year. Heather, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
That was a plan that we actually wrote at the high school level. It had to do with our test scores and just basically how we're going to bring up our test scores for kids that are struggling in the high school. So we just had to resubmit it, and you guys have to approve it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to
Motion approved.
a second?
Second.
A second, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Pergola?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly? Yes. Mr. Weidner?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett? Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 3, looking for a resolution for the district to approve a request for proposals for qualified providers for energy conservation measures. Shane, do
Motion
you want to
approved.
discuss that?
Sure, I'll just give a quick background on this. Let's come on. So about 2 years ago, we initiated a process to begin looking at ways in which we could tackle projects across the district that would result in energy savings. We had initially worked with an organization called ESG, and ESG has partnered with the district over the last couple of years to help identify projects, made some recommendations, no cost to the district. But in order to proceed with any contractor, to initiate these contracts under what is called the Guaranteed Energy Savings Contract, we have to do an RFP, or a request for proposals, to identify a contractor who would basically act as the project manager for a group of projects that would be identified to generate energy savings across the district and ultimately cost savings to the district. So when we made the decision to do the bond a couple years ago, portion of the bond proceeds were intended to be used for projects of this nature, where we saw that there were improvement opportunities that we wanted to tackle. So really the purpose of this motion is to get that ball started. So it is not a selection of that contractor, it is not a selection of the specific projects that we would be doing under that umbrella. It is to initiate that process so that we can get some contractors that might be interested in participating with the district. We have a template for what that RFP process would look like. We're in the process of updating that right now. But we would like to move forward with a request for proposals. But I would like to just say quickly that I would like the motion to be amended to include the language that at the end you would add through a guaranteed energy savings contract. That is very specific language that would be important, and I want to just make sure that that's part of the record when we have the motion.
Okay.
Motion approved.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
So the portion that you would add to the end of that statement, so it would read, recommend that a resolution be adopted for the district to issue a request for proposals from qualified providers of energy conservation measures through a guaranteed energy savings contract. And what that means, just for perspective, is that that contractor is saying that they will guarantee the savings that they are committing to when they identify projects for the district. So there is a very rigorous tracking process that has to happen over the life of that project for them to be able to come back and say that the district did in fact receive the savings that were identified. And if not, they're on the line to be able to cover what was guaranteed as a part of those projects. So that language is important because we want to make sure they understand that is a contingency of the commitment.
And we did at least one of these several years ago with McClure.
Correct. So in the past, the district was involved in, you may also remember the language ESCO, so that's in energy savings. So McClure did partner with the district several years ago and did a number of energy savings projects. That is correct, under a very similar structure.
Anybody else? Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Swilly? Yes. Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett? Yes. Dr. Capola?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes. Items 4 and 5 are resolutions for dual enrollment agreements with both Lackawanna and Keystone.
There was a motion from
Second.
Mr. Swilly.
Motion to approve
Second by Perbola.
4, 5, and 6.
And 6?
Yep.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question. At the next board meeting, I love this dual enrollment that we've been doing the last several years, but can we kind of get a number of how many students actually are using dual enrollment? I think that would be nice for the students and the public to know, especially for those parents that don't understand the dual enrollment.
I'm just going to repeat what she said because I know it would have been probably hard to hear in the back. So what Lori requested for the next meeting was numbers regarding the students who have participated in dual enrollment. Is that pretty accurate?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody else? No? Roll call, please.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Dr. Capola?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes. Okay, item 9, any other public comments?
I have a question for Heather. Did you have any more information about the testing?
Yes, that was the note that John passed. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah, so I did get more information this week about the testing program. So the state is providing money for us to to a voluntary.
So
I apologize.
The question was about the programs that are out there for voluntary COVID testing
Yeah.
through school. What information do we have on that?
So I can provide you with additional information finally. And it is a voluntary program. Districts do not have to participate. There are a couple different options to participate. Basically, that would allow us to do voluntary testing here at school. There's a couple different ways to do that. I don't know if you want me to give you the detail on that right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
All right. So there's something that they call pool testing. And what that does is you have students and they're grouped. And they do a self-swab and then they put it in a vial. So if, say I'm in, you're in Ms. McPherson's room, right? And your parents have consented to testing. And so every so often, like, you know, on a regular basis, whether that, it wouldn't be every week, but it would be like, let's say once a month. My students whose parents have agreed that they want to be part of this, do a self-swab. Everybody's swab goes in a vial. The vial is just labeled Ms. McPherson's room. It's not labeled by student. And so then it is sent away. And within 24 hours, the district is notified whether there was a positive test in that vial. Some school districts are utilizing the program that way. And then they bring the kids back in, again, with parental consent, and they do an individual test. And by that, then, again, they can identify and try to keep COVID out of the classrooms. That's one option. The other option would be to have our nurses trained to do the individual tests. So let's say your child comes to the nurse's office and they are presenting symptoms of COVID. We call the parent, we say to the parent, look, this is what's going on, and with your consent, right, you come in, sign the paper, we can do a rapid test. So that's another option. I really haven't discussed this I haven't gotten any details on it. I don't know how many districts around us are participating in this right now. I really don't know how other districts are going to use it. But right now, those are the two options for participating in the program. They say that they're going to provide staff. I'm skeptical about that, just given my last couple visits to the doctor's office, and they can't get nurses. And,
Where is this program coming from? Is it coming from the state?
Pardon me?
Is this program coming from the state?
No, the money's coming from the state, but they have contracted with an organization called Ginkgo, and they're actually the ones that are going to be doing it. So I'll have more information on it, and I'll have more information at the next board meeting about how other districts around us might be using it. At this point, it's just really brand new.
I would be interested in learning more specifically about offering individual testing with written parental consent. So I would just ask that we put that discussion and more information on the next agenda so that if there is something that we want to take an action on, we can vote it that night.
Okay.
Up or down,
Okay, I'll get more information and.
Yeah, I would just be skeptical about, where the data goes, who's tracking the data.
Yeah. Okay, and I have that as part of their PowerPoint. I can show you that.
And just on the surface, I'm not in favor of.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's the role of the school to get involved in the health care of the students. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
At least right now.
Okay,
So-
so I'll get you more information, Bill. I have a PowerPoint that they sent me, and I can put it out to you guys, and so you can at least formulate questions that you have.
When we talk about the scenarios of the quarantining and isolation, or even just a vaccinated person who is exposed and has to wear a mask for 14 days, is there a limitation on what kind of test can test them out, or like they can go buy the one at CVS and do it?
We haven't set any limitation on that, so we have not established that.
And I couldn't find anything in the CDC guidelines.
Okay.
So
'Cause
I don't
mean-
believe one exists because it doesn't specify PCR, rapid, or anything like that.
All right, because the last time I was involved with testing was when it was, go to CVS and wait 3 or 4 or 5 to 8
Right.
days to get a result, and
The PCR tests are coming back within 24 to 36 hours
Yeah.
at CVS. The Bionex test is a rapid antigen test you'll know in 15 or less than 15 minutes.
Or
Right.
30
And that's,
seconds.
you buy them for $22 or something like that at CVS. And
Yeah.
they're fairly accurate.
And
So
this
that's-
company offers both. They offer the rapid test or the PCR.
So I have a question that, so if you go to CVS and buy this over-the-counter test, how do you prove to the school whether you're positive or negative?
So in the past,
Are you going off of just word, or?
well, in the past, we've asked for documentation. We've asked for people to provide us with some documentation.
Okay, but the parent that did their child's test, who bought a kit.
I have no idea what the
Like,
test,
how is that working? Or we don't?
it's all new, Lori. I don't
Okay.
know.
yeah.
I don't
Well, and
know.
I mean, I see where that
Just
might be a gap
curious.
for I see it more or less for the people that want to test out, if you will, if we were able to have that kind of functionality. Less than, like, my kid is having symptoms. I mean, there might be parents that want to take the school up on that, but if, you have a scenario where you have a whole bunch of kids that are potentially going to have to quarantine because you have a probable case, and the case turns out to be negative, all this other stuff, if there was a way to help expedite that process with, let me reiterate again, with written parental consent, like nobody's kids are getting swabbed as a surprise to them. I don't know. I guess we'll talk about it next time and
Yeah.
go from there.
Okay, I apologize, I forgot about that.
No problem.
Anybody else?
So I appreciate your presentation. I just want to, if I can, discuss a couple of things with that presentation, just for 2 minutes. The guidance from the Department of Health is giving us some direction with various case numbers and case counts. There was an interesting point you made. The linchpin to some of this is masks and vaccines. We're not mandating, we're not forcing anything, but I think the community has to understand that as the numbers go, and we'll all assume that the numbers are going to go up. Number one, we want kids to be safe and staff to be safe, but the continuity of education is something that's super important for everyone on this board. At least it is for me, and I gotta believe it. So, as I said this in past, I believe this board, we are willing to meet on a dime to discuss issues that come up, and these issues, I believe, are going to come up. But I just have to say that the masking and the vaccinations are making the Department of Health drive what the school districts are going to do. Is that a fair summary? Okay.
I think so. So the key here will be is if we have low caseloads, maybe we cruise on and life moves on, we're all happy, we get in-person education every day, we get bigger cohorts, normalcy, no masking, we're all happy. If we don't, then we have to have a conversation around what are our alternatives to make sure that kids are here every day, not at home, not in isolation, and all those things, because I think we can do that with different measures. It's just a matter of when do we pull the trigger if we have to. So we're going to continue as we are, and if we need to call a special board meeting and discuss options, we'll do that. Right on.
Okay, I have not a COVID question, but back, the C3, the kids that are in school, are we still allowing, and I may have missed it, if the kids want to do a combo, you're not allowing that this year?
You're in or you're out.
Okay.
Now, there's only certain classes that are being offered on Fusion as Fusion C3 students, so a lot of our kids are coming in and maybe taking an AP course in person, but they're doing everything else online.
Yeah, but they still have, if they have to come in, they're being allowed to come in.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. I believe the lady behind you had her hand up first.
Did you point to someone else?
Yeah, lady behind you.
Hi, I'm Barb Landon, and...
Would you please use the mic?
I'm raising my two... I can't reach this.
That can tip, I think.
Twist it down. You should be able to just twist it, just don't, the microphone itself.
Thank you. I'm raising my two granddaughters, and they're both asthmatic. I want to commend our district. My girls are in gymnastics, and I talk to parents from other school districts, Dallas, Wyoming area, Jim Thorpe, Lake Lehman. And I heard what happened last year with their schools and their online program, and I know what happened with ours. And I cannot praise our district enough, from the online to in the classroom. And it goes from all the teachers, the administration, the custodians, everybody worked as a group to make the education work the best that they could and keep the kids safe. And that's why I'm here right now, because I want the kids to be in school, have a great education, and be safe. The CDC states, due to the circulation in highly contagious Delta variant, CDC recommends, I can't see with my glasses, sorry about that, universal indoor masking by all students age 2 and older, staff, teachers, and visitors to K-12 schools, regardless of vaccine. Now, you're making the kids wear masks on bus, but then when they walk in the building, they could take their mask off. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. Heather was talking about the numbers, and she kept saying, we didn't have those numbers last year. Why? Because they were 6 feet apart and they all wore masks. Now, we're taking all that away, and like you said, the numbers are going to rise. So to me, it would be prudent to do what other school districts in the area are doing. Have them wear masks and have them stay 3 feet apart. It only makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
George Uhas. So working together now, today is a lot different than months ago. You can see how we're all trying to cut webs. I'm working on delivery. And Heather's not a liaison, right? She is, she's a lady who's leading us through this. She's compassionate, she's got a job, so she's not just a liaison. So when I get ready to call you liaison, you're much more than just that. But she has to be a liaison to not sell, but to try to make us be able to digest what they're sending. And you all know there's more. I read the I read the whole entire PowerPoint that you had, and there's plenty. There's probably at least 6 things that are contradicting. It's 3 to 6 feet. It's wide, too many wide open stuff, too much, things to be argued over, and we will argue over them. So she's got a job to give you stuff. You can read it for yourself, but she's got resources probably that you don't, so she's trying to help you. At the same time, ultimately at the top of the chain is us. You're representing us. She's liaison to you. We got to continue to keep cutting this web, not adding to the web. Last school board meeting, I told you there was a unit of Marines who, and the test is out there. There's so much misinformation, not only from the CDC, but from everywhere else. But the Marine Corps did a test with the unit masked up, vaccines, took all the precautions, and then another unit, equal in size, equal duty, again, no precautions, no mask. They all have the same transmission and infection. My own parents are vaccinated and wear a mask. They're both got COVID. They both spread it. So whether you're vaccinated and wearing a mask, you're still getting it. 0 through 20 really hasn't changed since the last meeting we had. We know what the effects are on 0 through 20. You cannot disregard it. I know everybody wants to do something. I've heard everything, and please don't scream out, not me, because I get it. It's not everybody. Some people worry about the political aspects of it. Some people worry about losing their job. I've had people come to me and tell me this. So I get it. We're all trying to do a dance around all this. But it's very important to remember, you guys are you're representing us, make decisions for all of us. There's misinformation. Eventually you're going to have to distill everything in your own brains and keep working towards us. This is very confusing. The only language or the only tool that's going to help everybody agree eventually is the Constitution. So you really can't say, oh, here we go. You've got to use the Constitution more. I'll be doing a right to know tonight. And my right to know basically goes as follows. From December 31st, 2019 to August 26, 2021, I'd like to have any messaging, mailings, emails, hand-delivered notes, or transmissions from any entity that gives the school district, the school administration, or the school board the power or the authority or the perceived power or authority to abridge, infringe, or suspend the First, the Fourth, the Fifth, or the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, or the rights under HIPAA. So you guys, she'll have a copy of this, so you might want to do a little research on the 1st, the 4th, the 5th, the 14th. We're all not constitutional scholars, but go read that because there's going to be a lot of defense that's going to be used by those. Because ultimately, we're not going to get to agree. Every time we even make ground, the CDC gives us what they gave us up there, which was, it was cumulative. It used to be consecutive, now it's cumulative because consecutive isn't good enough. You get a bigger reaction if it's cumulative, because there's people who actually would break away, so they didn't break that 15-minute mark. Now they're taking that away from them because they need numbers, they want numbers. They're going to get numbers. It's a cold, it's a flu, it's a sickness, it's COVID, we get it. And they're going to get those numbers now that it's cumulative. So right away, we make a little bit of headway, they take us out at the knees. So the vaccinated versus the non-vaccinated, don't be divisive. Do not divide our students. I know you think you have to ask, you don't have to. Do the right thing. We're not following all their garbage. We want to do the cohort, we want to do the stuff where we can minimize and make everybody happy so that the impact is minimal. But you got to be really careful to start getting into some weird stuff. So please be very careful, everybody. She's just doing her job, and she does it well. I heard the kids scream and enjoy all day the last 2 days. I've been working close, so I appreciate you, Heather. I know what you're doing, but we all got a job from the citizenry up to our representatives and forward. So thank you guys for all you're doing.
Teresa Pasolka. 2 points. One, I want to second Mr. Pabola's concern with the testing, just in that it may be going into an area where it's not necessarily a school's jurisdiction. And in response to Barb, I agree that I think it's silly that they have to wear masks on the bus, but they don't have to in school. If they have to wear them, they have to wear them. If they don't, they don't. But I don't think you know better for my child than I do. And so I appreciate that, you're leaving it to a choice. If you want your child to wear a mask at school, they can. If they don't, they don't. And a real easy way to take the temperature of the constituents and parents and people in this district, you've done it before, is just send out a survey and see who's interested in a mask mandate and who's not. I know this week Governor Wolf wanted to get the legislature back together to issue a statewide mask mandate, and in the next breath he said only, I believe, 59 districts out of 474 have mandates, and yet he seemed to say that there was an overwhelming, push for them. Well, if it's overwhelming, I would think more than 59 would have them. So if you want to get a consensus of the parents, just ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
You gonna do number 6?
That was,
Second.
we did.
Did we?
Yeah.
I don't remember voting on it.
Yeah, it was 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, 4,
They
5,
were
and
part of
6.
that
I didn't
vote.
hear that then.
That was part of that.
Yeah, that was.
I didn't hear that.
The motion to adjourn?
Yeah.